I wanted to drop down and wrestle at 103. And
from 122?
Yeah. So I think the focus comes from the fact that I had really strong role models. I would say in my father and in my mother's support of what I was doing, in my father's example and my mother's support in what I was doing. And then, man, I just grew up with really good older brothers and sisters. Like my Derek's friends gave me more trouble than Derek ever did, you know, like, yeah. It's funny. I go back to this trying to be aware. You know, I can I can definitely call it the privilege, but I mean, that's like a whole other conversation.
It's kind of a loaded term. You don't mean it in the political sense. You mean it in the literal sense.
I mean, there is zero doubt that I grew up with a big old beautiful package of white privilege. Like,
okay, and the political sense too.
I mean, that is just a fact. But I really try and focus more on being aware of the fact that I grew up with a family that was like loving and supportive. I grew up with financial means that allowed me to have access to opportunities that a lot of other people can't or couldn't. And I think I happen to be the type of person where it's like that. It's like, well, I want to be the best at this then. I'm going to be the best.
Awesome. What is a conversation with your dad back then? Because I just can't imagine this, because I know that's the key for so many people's success. What is a conversation with your dad, maybe early in high school, about like acting? Like, what is that like? What is that like encouragement like? What is someone like your dad personally would say to you? Like, is he tough on you? Is he funny? What is that?
This is what's wild, man. This is what I to this day can't wrap my head around. My father was never somebody who like would sit me down and be like, Brad, you need to work hard. You need to follow through with this. And if you work hard enough, you will achieve your dreams. Like that conversation didn't exist. It was just there. It was in everything he did. It was in the pride that he took in his work and his home and his family. You know, by the time I got to high school, you know, because my dad was he's a Vietnam veteran, and he served in special forces. He was a Green Beret.
Wow.
A lot of people. Well, let me put it this way: if you ever met him, you would never know or consider or think about this, right? Just by what I would say most people think. He was not a career military guy. Like, he enlisted, he went, he put in his time, he came back, and that was it. He never really talked about it much. He never really, but so already there, that he was a mythological character to me. I aspired to be what I thought he had to have been to go through. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know. Like, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm gonna try to be what I think he is.
Yeah. I think that, coupled with what I saw, the man that I saw every day, day in and day out, that was it. It was really this quiet example of loyalty, consistency. You know, he was in. He worked five. You know, he worked full. You know, full-time plus job, but he was also always picking me up, and he was a part of my life. He was every part of my life, you know. So I think it was just that support, because I think about this a lot. I'm like, what what, where did it come from? And I think part of it's like I idolized my father and I wanted to be him, but I didn't quite know what he was. Um, I just knew it was awesome.
More goosebumps because everything you're saying is so related to what I've been studying for so long. There's a book called Iron John, if you ever heard of it, by a writer named
No.
Robert Bly. Um, I don't want to go too deep into it, but everything you said really goes in line with that book. And it's just about um, going into the subconscious to find this wild man who's hidden under a small pond in this like pristine forest. Uh, and that wild man underwater is like the full self. And but
Yeah.
that wild man is like a mystery, and he teaches you, he initiates you to a higher self. And everything
Yeah.
you're talking, and of course like the mystery, and you said you had to like, I don't know who this guy is, and that's that journey into the forest. And then the little boy goes into the forest and he puts his finger into the water, and the tip of his finger turns golden, and suddenly his hair falls in the water, suddenly his hair becomes golden. And this golden stage is what you're talking about in high school, is where you're like,
Yeah.
the world is yours at that point. You don't have to worry about the business side of things. You can immerse
Yes.
yourself fully into the play. But then later, of
Yes.
course, you have to go into battle and you have to go through all these other stages of initiation. And
Yeah.
what you talk about really reminds me of that progression. Yeah.
Yeah. And I so like the quiet support, he he allowed me to fail. And in that failure, he never like necessarily told me the answer, but he was there. He was so like one of the hardest points in my life in high school was I would say physically, mentally. I was asked if I wanted to. I wrestled at a, so in wrestling, right? There are different weight classes. Um, so at the time, there's like 103, 112, 125, 130, 135. I was a really skinny, scrawny kid, right? And I weighed about 100 and the beginning of my freshman year, I probably weighed 122 pounds. And then Craig Williams wrestled at 112. And they asked me if I wanted to drop down and wrestle at 103. And
From
so
122.
yeah, so I
Yes.
so I was like, yeah, let's do this. I mean, by this point, I had seen I don't know if you know the movie Vision Quest. Like,
No, I don't know that one.
I was huge. Like, I love sports movies, and I saw it as an opportunity. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So I mean, my whole family did, but my dad specifically watched me go from a natural weight of about 121, 122, slowly go down to 103 pounds. And I would go to, I was eating very, very strictly and specifically, and I would do workouts after practice at night before I went to bed. And the first time I weighed in at 103, uh, he was there. He was there for 2.5 hours at the gym after practice because I wasn't making weight. And the athletic director stayed there, and I continued to run laps, and they rolled me up in the wrestling mat like a sauna so I could continue to lose weight and sweat it out.
Oh man.
There are all kinds of negatives about that time and what the regulations were with making weight and
It was
wrestling
around that time that someone died with the bodysuit
that
on.
year.
Yeah. It was
That
that
year
year.
at,
Yeah.
at,
Yeah.
at Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
which was a product of a kid being on, he literally went into cardiac arrest, and it was a product of being on creatine and some other supplements and being massively dehydrated. And
Mm.
so bad combination. But so sorry, my point is, like, he was there the whole time. He didn't say a single thing necessarily. He didn't say like, you, I don't want you to do this, you shouldn't be doing this, even though I found out later like he really didn't think it was a good
Mm-hmm.
idea, or but he
Mm-hmm.
supported it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that first year of wrestling for me, getting through that season, paved the way for the rest of my life. I can go through almost anything physically now because of that time in my life, or I'm able to mentally work through things in a different way than I would have been before. And it's always because he was right there. He was right there next to me.